Now, we've got the bike back in the chart. So what we're going to do first is focus on the rising rate, the speed in which the front forks respond to the energy I put into them. Because what we've got to do is match this rising rate as close as we can get it with the back of the bike. So let's go on the front. And you can see it's pretty quick how it springs back. So now let's move to the back of the bike, push on this, and see how the shock comes back to me, and see if the rising rate is the same as the front. Now you can see it is extremely slow, so we have a total mismatch front to back. Now this will present many problems on the street, apart from the fact that the bike is completely imbalanced on rebound front and back. But when you get on the gas, the back of the bike's going to drop and stay there, so it won't finish corner properly. You'll have lots of other handling problems. So what we have to do now, this is the opposite problem. We need to open the rebound valve up to allow the shock to come back at me at an even rate compared to the front. So let's take care of that right now. Now we've made the change to the rebound. What we had to do in this case, because it was slow, was open the rebound to let the oil flow more, as opposed to the front, which was shut it down because it was rebounding too fast. So let's see how the rising rate has changed, because we obviously again need it to match the front. And that is a very significant difference from what we had before. So the whole goal here now is to have the bike bounce together this way. So let's go ahead, pull it back off the stand. And now the whole bike, we're going to push on where you would normally sit and the bar. The whole bike moves as one. And when you've got this synchronized, it looks fine now when it's cold, but remember, when you ride the bike, the oil gets hot. The viscosity and the rate of flow changes, so you really need to stay on top of your rebound damping. Now, if you're running street tires, there's going to be a distinctive wear pattern on the tread that you can use to see where you are on your settings. So make sure you go to the website and check that out, because that will give you a clue of which direction to go to change your rebound settings to get the bike working perfectly. So now let's move on to compression. You can see here inside the blue adjuster there's a flathead screw, and then we'll do a close-up on the shock in a little bit, but let's do the forks first. What does compression do? Well, basically it helps you control the forks response and the shock's response to a bump, whether that's a small crack in the road or a 3-inch deep pothole. So what do you need to do? Well, if you're taking the bike out for the first time, we've done all the settings right now, so we'll set suspension. We'll go ahead and set the compression adjustment up. So the thing to do, we have turned it all the way counterclockwise till it stops. So then we're going to count the number of turns we get. So half, 1, half, 2, half, 3, 3 1/4. So ideally what you should do is set this screw and the one on the other side somewhere in the middle. So let's go just 2 turns out right now. And then we'll do the same on the one in the back. What we then do is move to the shock, which we'll do a close-up on here in a second, and set the shock to 2 turns out on the compression setting. Because we've balanced the spring tension to set sag, we've balanced the bike on hydraulics for rebound, so now we're going to balance the bike on compression and make sure that when you go out, the bike is again working evenly. Now, where you end up might be completely different for the fork settings to the shock settings, and a lot of that really depends on how you brake. Are you an aggressive braker, or you'll need to run compression in tighter? And what ultimately does that mean? Well, if you have it backed off all the way to the left, you're going to get a super plush Cadillac type ride. If you're somewhere in the middle of adjustment, then it's going to give you a pretty firm response to a bump. But if you screw it all the way in to the right, the worst thing there is that you're going to deflect over a bump. So if you're riding and you're at lean and you hit a severe bump but your compression is too stiff, the forks aren't going to work, they're going to bounce off the bump, and that's a sure recipe for a crash. So bear that in mind when you're making these adjustments. So let's move to the shock and do the adjustment on the shock. Now remember, the adjusters are different on the shock. Compression on this bike, you have high and low speed. Low speed being the screw, high speed being the blue 14mm nut. And then rebound is on the bottom of the shock, and it's a flat blade screw, so they're not the same. So make sure you get your owner's manual out, which on this bike is very comprehensive and shows us. So now we want to go ahead and do this. We're going to screw it all the way to the right and come back 2 turns on the low speed screw. So half, 1, half, 2, half, 3, half, 4, half. So a lot more adjustment in this than the forks. So half, 1, half, and 2. So now we're set even front and rear. Now on the high-speed compression adjuster, basically you're going to back that all the way out to the left and go back in 1 turn and leave it at that point. There's really no reason for you to play with it much other than to experiment and find out yourself what it does. So by all means do that, but when you try and experience what that does, only use the high-speed compression adjuster on its own, okay? All right, now that we've got the bike set up hydraulically and in spring tension for Dave at 180 pounds, just to show you that one size does not fit all, we're going to put Chris on the bike 60 pounds heavier at 240 and do some very quick sag measurements to see how much that changes the way the bike's going to ride. So Chris, come on up. And no, he doesn't ride in flip-flops and shorts. So we just get that straight right away. All right, so we'll set the bike. You still. So with Chris on the bike, we've added another ½ an inch of sag in the back, just by him sitting on it. So let's go to the front, pull it down and set it. So we lost ½ an inch more in the back. So the back of the bike's sitting really low, and let's measure the front. And ½ an inch again in the front. So with 60 pounds, we've lost quite a lot of suspension travel with Chris just sitting on the bike. So what's that gonna mean? Well, a couple things. One, when he brakes, the bike's gonna dive pretty aggressively because the front end is soft. And when he gets on the gas, the back of the bike's gonna squat heavily, which will make it not finish a corner properly. So just because you jump on a buddy's bike doesn't mean that it's going to ride right. And in this instance, just a little bit of extra weight is going to dramatically change the way this bike works, and to some extent make it a lot less safe for Chris to ride it. So now what we've done, we set the bike up for Chris at 240 pounds, and we're going to show why it's extremely important that you get the bike set up correctly for your weight. So Jill Giles has graciously from Miller agreed to come and be on the bike for us. Thank you very much. You're welcome. So if you would go ahead, grab the handlebars like you're riding the bike normally. Okay, so we'll push down the back of the bike. Now we originally measured this at 24¼ inches. So with Jill on the bike, we're just shy of ½ an inch. So if Jill was to take this on the street and would ride at lean, the back of the bike would deflect off bumps rather than absorb the bump. So this is in a very unsafe condition for someone of Jill's weight. So let's check the front and see if it is equally as bad. Yep, it's equally as bad. So on the front, there's less than 1 inch of sag. So no matter how she rides the bike, if there's any bumps in the road at all, they're going to be immediately transferred through to her and make a very unpleasant riding experience. So bottom line on this for someone of Jill's weight is that the springs need to be replaced front and back. So don't assume if your friend says, yeah, ride my bike, that it's going to be a lot of fun. be very cautious about riding it because it may be too stiff or too soft, therefore dangerous to ride. All right, now to conclude, we've gone ahead, put you on the bike, and also remember the importance of setting the bike correctly to your weight, and realize that if you let somebody else ride the bike, it doesn't mean it's going to work equally as well for them. So customizing the bike to your weight is critical. Going through the bike and using the adjustability that's built into the motorcycle to make you comfortable is also equally as important. So once you've gone through those steps, you're pretty much ready to go out and ride. So obviously your pre-ride checks would include making sure the oil level is correct, your coolant's full, your tires are the correct pressure, and that the chain has the correct amount of slack in it. And at that point, warm the engine up for 2 to 3 minutes and go off, enjoy your new bike.
Me say me